All right. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming to our regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners for today, May the 6th, Monday, 2019. And welcome, everyone. Look forward to a good meeting this morning with a lot of good dialogue. And so we have some good recognitions and presentations as well this morning. So I would ask to start the meeting if everyone would please join me in a pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as we always do, I ask that you join us as we offer a moment of silence, remembering all the good things that we have in our life and in our county, and thinking about our first responders that keep us safe every day, and all the men and women of the United States military that serve our country. Okay, thank you. Item 2 is additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda. Item 8A has been pulled from the agenda, and we have an additional item recommended to be added to the agenda, which I guess I will call item 8B. And would I think, gentlemen, we all have a copy of it, so I would entertain a motion to add that item to our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we add the new item and call it 8B.
Second. Any discussion?
Is that the fence?
That's the fence.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question on adding item 8B to the agenda. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that item will be added to our agenda. Next up is announcements. Okay, so Flagler County, our Flagler County BOCC meetings are broadcast via YouTube, and again, as a reminder, due to the nature of the live streaming process, there may be unavoidable delays. When the meeting has concluded, it is typically posted within 24 hours and can be viewed again in its entirety. We would also like to ensure that everyone receives important messages in a significant emergency or disaster. And to sign up for our Alert Flagler or our Special Needs Registry, please visit our website, which is flaglercounty.org/emergency, or you can call 313-4200 for information or registration assistance. Flagler County Fire Rescue and the City of Bunnell are hosting a community health fair, which is at the old Bunnell City Hall, and that's actually today from 6 to 8 p.m. Stop in and receive information on a variety of community services, including flu shots, diabetic screening, and assistance in registering for emergency notifications and services. Flagler County Fire Station 41, located in the Hammock, will host an open house on Saturday, May the 11th from 9 to noon. You're invited to tour the station and meet your local fire personnel. Additionally, personnel from Florida Forest Service and Emergency Management will be available to answer questions and help residents sign up for Alert Flagler and the Special Needs Sheltering Program that I talked about earlier. Flagler County is soliciting registered voters residing in Flagler County for various citizens volunteer boards and councils. Some of these positions by law must be filled by persons currently representing certain occupations or residing in a specific area of the county, and these positions will remain open until filled. And we would ask if you are interested or know someone to please respond to us. And some of the openings that we have at this point on the contractor review board, we still have an opening for a plumbing contractor, a roofing contractor, and an engineer or an architect contractor. The Economic Opportunity Advisory Council has one member needed for that represents the finance and investment banking industry. One member is needed for the Tourist Development Council, which that person would need to be involved in the tourist industry. We have a citizen at large position available for our Value Adjustment Board, and there's a citizen at large position open for the Library Board of Trustees. And again, as a reminder, all those positions will stay open until filled, And if you want more information, you can look on our website, flaglercounty.org, under the advisory board vacancies, or by contacting Ms. Maury Davis at mdavis@flaglercounty.org or 313-4094. A couple of announcements. Today at 1 o'clock, we have our first of the season budget workshop. So that'll be today, 1 o'clock. And in the past, we've had these meetings at the EOC, but as a reminder, we've moved all of those meetings will now be here in our chambers. So that's today at 1 o'clock, first budget workshop. And then our next regularly scheduled, actually, we have another budget workshop, which is also on Monday, the 20th. That'll be 1 o'clock. And then our next regularly scheduled meeting will be here Monday, May the 20th at 5 p.m. It says 5 a.m. on my notes here, but I'm pretty sure that's 5 p.m. And that'll be right here in the chambers. So I think that concludes our announcements. And so next up, we have some recognitions and proclamations to do. And most importantly, or very significantly, is we want to take time to recognize the great work that all of our county staff did with some contractors and a whole lot of help on the dunes restoration project that took well over a year and involved a lot of moving parts, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. And what I thought would be appropriate is I asked Commissioner Hanson if he wouldn't mind saying a couple of words, since he was chair last year when we kicked off the project, and he was intimately involved and visited up there a lot. So I thought he could do that, and then we could get on with our part of our presentation and recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It goes without saying that this was an amazing feat that you all accomplished. Our road and bridge folks and our engineers is remarkable, and we have become sort of a model for the rest of the counties in the state. They come to Mr. Hadid. Several counties have come and said, "How did you do this? How did you manage to accomplish this feat?" It took a lot of people, a lot of help. We certainly should thank Senator Hudson and Representative Renner. They helped a lot. But the people in the hammock contributed time and money to help us. It's an amazing feat. 11.4 miles, 690,000 tons of sand. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable what you guys did. We started on January 22nd. I think was when we were out on the sand, and we shoveled sand and started this project. 13 months later, it was done, under budget, several $1 million under budget. And again, you guys, the road and bridge, unbelievable. And our engineers, Faith and your team, unbelievable what you guys did. I think a standing ovation for all you guys. Unbelievable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's go down.
Yeah.
Let's go down.
Yeah, Julie, I'd like to turn it over to you, and we can do the recognition part, please.
Sure. I'm Julie Murphy, Public Information Officer, and I've got Maury Davis up here helping me. So we have a number of certificates and challenge coins to hand out. And we're actually going to start with a couple of our contractors because, we're better together and we wouldn't be able to do this without our wonderful partners. Oh, thank you. So we'll start with Alessandro Soares from Inter Incorporated. Yeah. Michelle Sanders from Eisman and Russo. Tony Mafad from Eisman and Russo. Wendy Laurent from Tyler Engineering. Ken Craig, Taylor Engineering. And we'll move on to staff now. And Michael Esposito from admin is not here today, but he did a lot of work trying to get easements from residents, temporary easements, so that we could do the work. So we want to make sure that we call out his name. And Liz Yates from Road and Bridge. Chuck Yates from Road and Bridge. Jesse Wright from Road and Bridge. Eugene Williams Jr. from Road and Bridge.
There you go. There you go.
Put in 30 more, y'all. Watch this.
William S. Weeks from Road and Bridge. Ron Wagner from Road and Bridge. Alexander Spiller, Road and Bridge. And Project Manager. Jacob Smith, Road and Bridge. Grayson Schlobaum from Road and Bridge. Timothy R. Pravat, Road and Bridge. Alan Perella, Road and Bridge. Donnie Nobles, Road and Bridge. Ronald J. Nobles, Road and Bridge. Sean Newberry, Road and Bridge. George Miller, Road and Bridge. Terrence Marshall, Road and Bridge. John Manos Road and Bridge. Christopher Collega Road and Bridge. Ryan Kaznaka Road and Bridge.
How you doing?
George DeRose III Road and Bridge. Dylan Jacobs Road and Bridge. Frank Jermack Road and Bridge. Stephen Durrance Road and Bridge. Michael Durrance Road and Bridge. William M. Dawson Road and Bridge. Casey Crabb Road and Bridge. Jackson Cox Road and Bridge. Brad Bond Road and Bridge. Robert Bauman Jr. Road and Bridge. Tim Baltzley Road and Bridge. From our engineering department, Gracie Resba. Dennis Leap, Road and Bridge. Or excuse me, engineering. I'm sorry, Dennis. Amy Kennedy, engineering. Richard Gordon, engineering. Gerard Farley, engineering. And Ms. Faith Al-Khatib, our engineer.
Good morning. Good morning, Faith Al-Khatib, Flagler County Public Works Director and County Engineer, Today, we are celebrating Road and Bridge Department and the Engineering Department. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here today. It's an amazing job under budget and also within schedule. The first project in the state, handling it in-house forces. Great job, team. I would like to have Tony and Ken, if they can say a couple of words, if you don't mind, guys.
I want to say thank you for our partners, Flagler County, Intera. I think the success of this project was due to all the teams partnering together and at the same time through communication. That was a very successful project in the opinion of a lot of counties around the state of Florida. So thank you so much.
Ken Craig with Taylor Engineering. I was the design engineer. January 2017, I think it was, we got a call from Flagler County asking for help responding to the impacts from Hurricane Matthew. And that led us on about a year-long process of doing the design work, doing all of the permitting work, which was very challenging because it was a very unique project with the extent of the area that we were actually working in, the unique nature, the different types of sediment that are out there, sand with the coquina and whatnot. Also helped the county work through the moving target that was FEMA. I'm not sure if we ever got there, but we did. We tried. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association and also the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association. So I've seen beach projects all over the country, and this is unique. This is really something that you guys should be really proud of. Again, doing something like this in-house is unprecedented. So my hat's off to you guys. It's just to get this thing in the ground is an amazing feat. Congratulations.
And Commissioner, without your support, we will never be here today. Thank you so much for having the available resources for us to get this project done. Thank you so much.
And everybody knows I love my pictures, so if we can get everybody to pile up here for one big picture. And I have to apologize to Mike Kresick from Intera, and I apologize I didn't realize that you were here today, and I will get you a certificate, but I've got a coin for you. You want to come up and get a coin? Thanks.
Hey.
Hey, tighten up.
Closer. Don't be shy.
I went down.
The people with my height in the front.
Not Jackie.
Come on.
Tighten up, don't be scared. Suck it up if you have to.
Where am I going?
You're going to pay for that one.
Somebody will have their eyes closed. We're going to try to.
All this fame.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Mr. Chairman, could I add one other comment to that?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, it took over a year of planning and working and to get this, as Ken mentioned, but, you know, one of the unique things we did was Commissioner Sullivan and I went to Washington to plead our case, and I have to tell you, that was not exciting, and it was a little boring, and we got no help. We tried. We met with FEMA, we met with the Interior Department, we met with the Corps of Engineers, and got no help. So it was quite a process that we went through to get this done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just I would say this is one of the things I think we did pretty well over the last couple of years.
Yes, sir. Okay. We're going to move on to a proclamation, which is for the National Correctional Officers Week, May 5th through the 11th of 2019. I know we have Sheriff Staley here, and I've asked Commissioner Sullivan if you would please read the proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll wait till everybody gets up here. A proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners designating May 5th through 11th, 2019 as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week in Flagler County. Whereas correctional employees in Flagler County form a core element of the public safety team in our community, and whereas our correctional employees provide security supervision and treatment services for more than 3,500 individual cases in the course of a calendar year. And whereas in Flagler County, professional correctional employees serve a co-equal role with law enforcement and fire rescue colleagues engaging in dangerous and potentially life-threatening situations on a daily basis, and whereas members of the Flagler County community need to more fully recognize and understand the complex, dangerous, and challenging responsibilities carried out by every single staff member in the Flagler County Detention Facility. As whereas each Flagler County Detention Facility staff member accepts enormous personal and professional responsibility, which is unlike that of any other agency in Flagler County. And whereas public safety work will be increasingly recognized and understood as a foundation of public safety in Flagler County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that they hereby proclaim the week of May 5th through 11th, 2019 as National Correctional Officers and Employees Week in Flagler County. We encourage all our residents to join in recognition and appreciation of the outstanding service professional correctional employees provide for the safety and welfare of our community. Adopted the 6th day of May 2019, tested Tom Bexley, Clerk of Circuit Court and Controller, and signed by Donald T. O'Brien, Chairman, County Commissioners, Flagler County. Thank you very much. It's well deserved, and it is a tough job.
Welcome, Sheriff.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Sheriff Rick Staley, and this is part of the representative of the team that work at the Green Roof Inn. They're the ones that, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you hope to never meet. If you are a offender, you do want to meet them. And I'll just tell you a letter I got the other day from, it was a few months ago now, from an inmate. And I thought, oh, what's he complaining about? It turned out that he's a retiree that made a mistake and got arrested and was serving some time in the county jail. And he wrote me this letter that he was a retired pilot, lives on the island side of the county. He has stayed in some of the best hotels around the world, and he wanted to let me know how well the team does at the Sheriff Perry Hall Inmate Detention Facility. They check on him constantly. They serve him food. They check on him. And he thought they all needed about a 40% pay raise, and he was willing to pay more taxes. So that was the letter I got in summary from an inmate, but I think it goes to testament of what this team does. So next to me, is Chief Steve Cole, who is the Chief of the Court and Detention Services, and I'll let him introduce the rest of the team and say anything if you'd like.
Good morning, Steve Cole, Division Chief, the Sheriff's Office. To my left, I've got Sergeant Saw and Commander Davis and Director Quintieri. And I'll just echo what the Sheriff said. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 25 years, and for about 22 of those years, I was on the law enforcement side of the house. And the Sheriff asked me to run the correction facility, and I learned day in and day out the unselfish work that these men and women do at that detention facility every day. And thank you for recognizing them today, because sometimes they go unnoticed, and they really appreciate the recognition. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
And finally, I would just add that last year the jail became accredited by the Florida Commission on Corrections Accreditation, first time in the history, thanks to the team that's in there.
Right. Well, thanks.
Well done.
Will you join us for a photo? Thanks.
Sheriff, over here, one more turn. Whatever happened to the person downstate that didn't like the use of the Green Roof Inn?
Well,
he had a place called that, I guess.
Well, unfortunately, that was the April 1st, April Fool's Day edition of the Observer, but everybody still believes it.
Oh, okay.
But so officially on the record, we were never sued for the use of the Green Roof Inn name. In fact, we have it trademarked. And so if somebody does use it besides us in Florida, we can go after them. But you would not believe how many people thought that was a real headline.
Good job, guys.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to resolve that the proclamation for National Correctional Officers Week be approved.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we have a couple of presentations, and I see first up is a presentation from our airport director, Mr. Roy Seeger. Morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, County Commissioners. My name is Roy Seeger. I'm the Airport Director of the Flagler Executive Airport. And I'm here, as you all know, we got announced this about a month ago, that we were the recipient of the FAA Southern Region Airport Division 2018 General Aviation Safety Award. The project that was submitted for consideration for this award was the relocation and extension of runway 1129. As in the past we talked about this is the single largest project that was ever undertaken since the airport was originally constructed in 1942. This award is quite an honor, as the FAA Southern Regions Airport Division oversees airport development, certification, safety in the following states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Julie, could you go back to the other photo, please? There you go. So up in your monitors there, you're seeing that's the approach end of runway 11 when it was originally, before we started construction. So what we had to fix there, so what it did, as you can see at the top of your photograph, we had what the FAA would call a hotspot. We had two intersecting runways at the approach end of runway 06 and 29, and that can be a very, 24 and 29, and that is a hazard that had to be fixed. And also we didn't have proper runway safety areas. So what we did, so keep in mind where that alignment is, that runway, we moved that runway 400 feet south and built a brand-new 5,500-foot runway, and then turned the old runway and built a brand-new full parallel taxiway as well. You can switch that picture. So you can see that's the way it looks now. So it was quite an accomplishment to get that. This was a $12.2 million project, and I'm happy to report the airport's portion was less than $208,000 of that $12.2 million. And as I always like to do when I ever have an opportunity to say the airport is a true enterprise fund, none of those monies came from any taxpayers in Flagler County. This project took 1 year to complete, and it was finished under time and under budget. And as you all know, and as we witnessed here this morning, you can't have a great project without a great team. And at this time, I'd like to ask some of the team members to come up here and join me up front. And one of our consultants was Hoyle Tanner Associates, and that is Doug Norman. Please come forward, Doug. We also have GAI consultants, Jack Thompson and Dan Nichols. Halifax Paving, we have Joey Durrance. 4C's Trucking and Excavation, Chelsea Herbert. And also I'd like to, at this time, thank also the county administration and the Board of County Commissioners, because without your support and allowing us to do what we do, we wouldn't be able to do that. So thank you very much for that. So if you all could stand right up front there, that'd be great. And I'd like to give one more special thanks, and I couldn't do any of this without my great staff I have at the airport. They keep everything going, and couldn't do it without them. So thank you very much, Commissioners.
Ready? Here we go. Oops. More. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner.
Could I also add that Mr. Thompson, who we recognize in that particular group, was the prior airport administrator, et cetera. I moved here probably 12 years ago, and I spent some time on committees both at the city and the county here, and I was on the airport advisory. And when Roy came into the airport here, he had a little bumping around with all the good old boys and some of the things that were going on in the airport, and I think it was a little bit strained on certain days during that period of time. But I'm really pleased with what we've done with this airport and getting our things in order and just cleaning it up, and also at the same time opening the airport to new businesses, et cetera, and putting that back road, the tower in there. And I think Roy's done an exceptional job leading us that way. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very good points. Okay, next up we have some presentation, our update to our website, and I guess, Mr. Shoup, you're going to take us through that. Welcome this morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Jared Shoup, I can't even say the new name, Chief Information Officer for Flagler County. So just wanted to give you guys a quick update. We've done a little bit with the website. We just wanted to give you guys an update as to where we're at. So you'll notice some of the colors have changed, and some of that have started with the ADA compliance. So it's not a ton that's been done, but there's a little bit that's been done on the website with the color changes and some of the remediation that's necessary. We've also added our accessibility statement to the website. It will be fully functioning, but basically it says, more or less, we're in the process of making this thing ADA compliant. So this is one of those things that we talked about during that last meeting when I was up here a few months ago. The biggest change that we made, and we just wanted to make it public, and that's why they asked me to speak, one of the things that with the onboarding of Mr. Cameron, he came to us and said, hey, I have no easy way to find really staff in the county. So one of the things that we did do to make it easier for the staff and for the taxpayers and anybody that wants to use our system is we added our staff directory link. So in here is about 122 staff at this point. They're easy information, easy to find, how we can get a hold of people, where we can find information. So this is the start of looking at our website completely differently. This is one of the entry points. The next entry points is looking at, okay, I'm a new resident. How do I find, trash service and TV service and all those fun things that we need to find? So we're going to try and make this a little bit more taxpayer friendly, more of the people that are moving in, more of the resident friendly. And one of the things was, like I said, with the onboarding Mr. Cameron, he couldn't find who was who and who was where and who did what. So this was the first start of trying to figure it out with staff. So that's pretty much my big update. I prepared for this a lot to bring this one to you, but no, it took us a little bit of time to get this going, but we're making strides little by little.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I just have one on the ADA compliance.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I think this would be for Mr. Hadid. Is anything going on in the state to try and get these law cases that have hurt a number of counties and cities, get that under control at some point?
Every local government is acting on its own. What we see as local government attorneys are other local government attorneys posting on the blog or sending emails that they've gotten one of these, we're going to sue you letters, and what should they do? So we've got local government attorneys seeking counsel from other local government attorneys who handle these issues. Is the state doing something overall, sir? I do not know.
Okay.
I recently just got back from a conference, and not from the legal perspective, from the IT perspective. We haven't seen anything other than just collaboration and cooperation. I believe Volusia County just posted for a project coordinator for their ADA compliance, and they're starting to build their team down there, similar to what we're looking to do up here. But more or less, it's incurred costs on the counties to be able to bring it back up into compliance until there is some federal guideline or federal regulation requiring us not to do such.
Just to follow up, I just worry that we had to pay basically a hostage fee to get out of the one item that we've had, but that's just one item. It doesn't mean we're free, right? I mean, they could come back at us again.
Anytime, any plaintiff.
Right. Okay.
Can I take my time back from Mr. Sullivan's question? You just alerted me to something that I failed to mention. The federal government has declined to provide guidance to state agencies. There was a proposal, that is, they did promulgate a proposed rule, and then they decided to take it back. So the federal government, and I think that's an action that's maybe 2 years old, where they decided to step back. I don't know if they intend to get back in the arena. I'm sure that the larger urban governments are probably contacting or speaking to their congressional representatives or saying, look, you got to do something. So I don't know if that's had any traction, but that is another option, another venue for relief to local governments that are having, to face this issue. And by the way, that includes school boards. It includes all public agencies. We're just not talking about other county commissions or city commissions.
Includes
it's a
private
far
businesses.
wider net.
Private businesses as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
Correct.
Even personal phone calls. Now I'm getting calls where my number appears on the thing. So obviously somebody's using my number to call me, and nobody moves. I know the state probably 3-4 years ago they had some sort of program that they were going to stop some of these, and if you paid them $10, they were going to do something. Well, I'm not paying them the $10, and they're not doing anything.
Yeah, what you're discussing is spoofing, and I mean that happens often on email and on phone calls, especially. It's more prevalent now. It started back in the day with the radio stations and those that were trying to play off that they're calling from the local pizza shop and this and that. Vendors have tried to close that down, but there's still ways behind it and ways around getting that spoof out.
Jared, have you been working on the mobile optimization part of the website? Not that there's a major issue here, but there is one commissioner in the higher number of districts that when you look at the website on a cell phone or if you look at it in if you look at it in portrait mode, they don't show up on the right.
Yeah, there's a number
That's
of minor.
me, by the way, in case you guys didn't know that.
We could have guessed.
And maybe that's a good thing because then they email everybody else and not me.
Yeah, I think they
So-
should use
Yeah,
Dave Sullivan
there's-
for complaints.
There's a number of those issues that we're having that we're looking into as we start this approach, looking at the entire system, a minor rebuild, and we're also looking at possibly creating an app for the county as well.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Jared?
No, Jared, you guys are doing a good job at evolving that website, and I know it's going to be a constant evolution, but it's starting to show the growth and the movement of the county. Good job of it.
Thank you. Definitely moving target.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move into item 5 on our agenda, which is our community outreach portion. This is a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment on any consent agenda item or topic not on the agenda. As a reminder, each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, George Mayo, Palm Coast. One question is, where are we at FEMA since we had the presentation for the dunes? How much do they still owe us, or how much have they paid us? My main reason for being here today is last night on 60 Minutes, and I have broached this question to the commissioner previously over the past couple of years. The first the first story on 60 Minutes was ransomware and how prevalent it is. And it stated that among the cities were Cleveland, Newark, Atlanta, and Sarasota, Florida, that have been hit with ransomware. And everybody paid it except Atlanta. And they said, we're not paying ransomware, we're not paying hackers. Well, it took them over 7 years and $20 million to get their system back up and running. And they still lost files and that were never able to retrieve court files, sheriff's files, et cetera. And I've asked this question before about us. How are we situated for ransomware? I know Jared is very intelligent. He's very good at what he does. But I'd like to know if we have an IT security analyst on his staff. I think he has enough going on. I think with the case of ransomware going on, if this is something that you could look at and adding to the staff. It says usually, they also show it, as I say, I recommend if you go on to 60 Minutes online and watch the show, you might glean something from it. Maybe our staff could also. That it's usually the $50,000 to $55,000 that they request. And they even hit the town of Leeds, Alabama, of several thousand people. So nobody's immune to it. You could be a large city. They hit the port of San Diego. They hit Colorado State DOT. And they hold everybody for ransom. Usually what they say, a retired FBI agent who started his own company now showed that once you pay it, they give you the encryption keys and they don't come back because they know if they came back and did it again, everybody would just stop paying. So they hit you once and they leave you alone. He said companies have been involved, but they don't want to publicize it because it would probably affect their stock prices. So this is something out there, and I hope the money that we could save possibly in the future by hiring somebody to keep track of this, even though nobody's immune, might be well worth the dollars spent. He also showed the FBI and analysts that these on the dark web are available to anybody. People can purchase them and then send them out and make money for themselves. So that is my basic question. Like I said, I've asked this before. I think Jared does a wonderful job. I'm sure his staff does too, but maybe this is something we seriously need to look at before we're hit and compromises and losing files. It would cost us much more than what it would cost to hire somebody. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joan Apatato, Plantation Bay. I hope what this gentleman just spoke about does not fall on deaf ears. He spoke twice about this. Please take it into consideration. This morning, I'm going to be discussing Bing's Landing. I would like to direct this question through the chair to Attorney El Hadid. Mr. Hadid, did you draw up the lease for Bing's Landing? What does approved as to form on the lease above your signature mean? The county is in a debacle because of the Good Old Boys Club commissioners, past and present, headed by then Craig Coffey. Our attorney receives $275,000 a year. He has an assistant attorney and I believe a paralegal also. Attorney Hadid has cost the taxpayers, of which are paying all these ridiculously high salaries, is going to look out for the taxpayers and not be a part of the fiefdom. We have in this county, Mr. Hadid must be terminated and an investigation done as to the damage he and Coffey and the commissioners that gave a carte blanche lease to Michael Goodman. Loans have been made, taken out at the expense of the taxpayers on other issues. Plantation Bay Water, the purchase of the old hospital that was as illegal as illegal goes. The Sears building purchase, Bing's Landing, by the past and present commissioners. What is the county's insurance cost a year to protect you commissioners and the county attorney? I would like to know, in the lease, there's supposed to be $1 million policy, insurance policy, that Mr. Goodman has to protect the county. Do you have a copy of that lease? Do you have a copy of that policy? And does the county also have an insurance policy to protect the taxpayers against suing? I would like an answer today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Alfatato. Next speaker, please. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Pat Cody. I came before the commissioners on November 5th regarding the roundabout at Cody's Corner, the proposed roundabout at Cody's Corner. During that meeting, Craig Hansen came out against the roundabout. Also during that meeting, Nate McLaughlin said that something could be done about the flashing yellow light, the light signs. During that meeting also, when I stated that I had come before the commissioners 13 years ago, and the result of that was that we got the blinking stop sign that blinks yellow, Craig Coffey held up 5 fingers saying that they're $5,000 each. During that meeting also, it was discussed that the county would go about looking into replacing those stop signs to be red. We're 6 months later and nothing has been done. Also during that meeting, a motion was made by Commissioner McLaughlin to write a letter to the governor in opposition of the roundabout. It was seconded by Commissioner Erickson. We have been to the board, to the records department, the public records department. They have no record that a letter was sent. If a letter was sent, they wonder, was one never sent to their office? Also, I want to know, after that meeting, was this brought to the attention of the River to the Sea Committee? Additionally, in addition to that, I would like to know how long will it take the county to figure out if we can get a blinking red stop signs on each end of 304, like we have the blinking yellow signs. People run through there because if you're not familiar with it, you might think yellow means caution. It might not mean stop to you. And that's why most people that go through that intersection do, because they're blinking amber and they blink very weakly. As I stated in November, if the county doesn't have the $10,000 for the signs that Craig Coffey said they were, I'm sure that I can come up with fundraisers to get the $10,000. We really need those. Additionally, there's two other things I'd like to bring up. Playground equipment has been removed from the Hall Creek Community Center. We have lost one of our swing sets, we've lost one of our slides, and we've lost one of our little screw-in-the-ground play toys. When are they going to be replaced? Additionally, the subcontract company that you have cleaning the Hall Creek Community Center is not doing a very good job. I had an event there Friday, and before I could use the stove, I had to scrub the top of it because the crud on the top was very thick. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cody. Next speaker, please. Morning, sir.
Good morning. Ken Johnson, the Hammock. I'll make this quick because I know you're busy. I just want to point out to you that we're very, very organized. We don't want the expansion of the restaurant in our community. Everybody knows all that. To best of my knowledge, I know two people in the Hammock that are for that restaurant, and one of them happens to be a co-owner, so of course he's going to be. I just want to say we're strong. We got 2,000 signatures. A lot of us are retired like I am, and we got two things on our mind now, fishing and trying to slow this down. I want to say we're going to march through the next 3 years, right up to the elections again, and we ain't going to forget. We're not going to forget. We're going to keep fighting for this, and you know what I'm trying to say by that, right? You understand what I'm saying? No?
We're not having, just say what you want to say, sir, okay? Thanks.
We'll carry it through. If we don't get support for what we want in our neighborhood, we're going to carry it through right through to the next 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other speakers this morning? Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, I will close the community outreach portion of our agenda. And to address some of the items, in terms of FEMA reimbursements and status on that, Mr. Cameron, is that something you want to come back to us with, or are you prepared to talk about that now?
Yes, sir. We'll get back to you that we have received some reimbursements that have gone into reserves. Those were from Matthew. We have some Irma that is pending. We haven't gotten reimbursements from those, but I can furnish you the exact numbers.
Yes, if you would, I would request put that on the agenda for our next meeting with a report of where we're at with from both storms.
Yes, sir, as you wish.
I know we've seen a spreadsheet before. It's a little complicated, but maybe if we can kind of dumb that down a little bit for us and do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll give it to you in a format of what's original, what's been paid, and what's outstanding.
I think that works. Is that all right for you, commissioners?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. All right. Second issue, Mr. Mayo raised regarding ransomware. I don't know if Mr. Shoup would want to address that or talk about that. And you might want to discuss if we have insurance for that as well.
We do have the insurance. Yes, ransomware. We've been actually hit, believe it or not, between all of our covered entities and ourselves 3 times in the last 2.5 years. We've been able to recover, luckily, within hours of it occurring. The worst part is we talk about security all the time. The worst part of the security is people actually use the computer. It's not the people from the outside. It's people that click on the links on the inside. We do have a request, and we've requested in the last number of years to add a security analyst. At some point, we do hope to add that, especially with the CJIS requirements, the criminal justice information requirements on the sheriff's side and auditing, et cetera. But there's only so many pieces to that pie that are going around. Everybody's got to, take it when they can get it. So we're looking forward. We do the best we can do with the staff that we have. We've got some securities in place and some technology in place to stop that and to make sure that doesn't occur. But we're moving ahead as best as we can. It's not if, it's when. That's all I'm going to say.
Mr. Chairman, this was one of the first questions I asked Mr. Shoup when I arrived here. His backup methodology, and I don't want to talk about the details of it in public, but it is such that it makes it very, very difficult for us to have a catastrophic loss. We may get an interim loss for a day or so of data, but the way that he manages backup is pretty intensive, and it almost makes it physically impossible for us to have a catastrophic loss.
Correct.
Commissioners?
I just wanted to reinforce, it was an extremely interesting item on 60 Minutes last night. And remember what they go after. They go after the 9/11 call system. And according to the government people who were on the show, that this particular ransomware is impossible to recover from, and if we don't have good backup. And so it is a very important item and something we really should be watching all the time.
Without giving away too much on ours, our 911 call taking system, or they call it a CPE for our environment, our call taking system is sandboxed. It sits outside of all of the rest of our networks. So it is able to get to you through a firewall, but you have to know the firewall, the VPN, how to log into it, or you have to physically go and sit in front of it. We did that intentional to segregate the two systems to make that secure, especially the call taking. Dispatching is on completely separate systems, completely different backups, completely different redundant backups that occur regularly, like the county commissioner said, or I'm sorry, county administrator said. We keep that very careful with, keep it very secure, as you see with the 911 side of the house.
Jared, I want to applaud you because I've noticed in the 4 months I've been here a lot of the security stuff that pops up. Also want to recommend the Director of Cybersecurity, which we know is in Augusta, Georgia now, the cyber hub for the country. I actually saw him several weeks ago, and he was discussing some of the programs and things that they're doing. But I need to remind me next week to get you in contact with him because they are evolving. I mean, that's where everything's coming out of, and it'd be a good connection with you. And I know they do a lot of training and different programs through the federal government. But remind me to connect you with them.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great contact. We're already part of the InfraGard and the Florida Fusion Center, a few things like that, so that'd be great. FBI.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
Well, question, are we putting new workstations into our 9/11 operation? I thought I saw something a couple months ago or something.
We've always put new workstations in. We upgraded that last year. We put 12 workstations at the primary, 16 at the backup, and then we rotate those regularly on a 3-year replacement plan.
So we've got 12 steady people in there now at one time?
There's 6. We have capability of 12. So typically you want double your staff space in case we have a disaster. We have places for those people to sit. So we do have 12 at the primary.
That always seems to be a hot spot here with sheriff's cars pulling in and out and et cetera.
Yeah, I believe they're booked to 5 right now on shift, I believe. Chief? Correct. Yes, Chief. 5. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jared. With respect to the Bing's Landing lease, any comments there, Mr. Hadid?
Can I say something real quick before he does? I don't know if everybody recalls, but at that workshop where I first came in, I specifically asked who wrote that lease, and Craig Coffey said that he did. So I just want to remind everyone of that I did ask Mr. Hadid if he did, and it was specifically said that Craig Coffey had wrote that lease.
Whoever drafts a lease, it's irrelevant because a lease is a contract between two parties that both parties have the right to negotiate and the responsibility to negotiate on their behalf for the terms on a lease. So who wrote what sentence or what word is really irrelevant. The end of the day is when a lease is signed and it's negotiated, it's a binding contract. And so, the genesis of the lease or versions of the lease, I don't see how that's relevant to anything other than the fact the document that is legally agreed to by both parties, that's what's relevant. at the end of the day. That's my 2 cents on it. Mr. Hadid?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Mullins. That's correct. You asked, it was at a January workshop, you asked the very pointed question, and he responded. Citizens do not generally understand how these legal documents come into being, and they may presume that I write all of the language in a negotiation. I did a count here about how many administrators I've served over my career, and I got up to 9. Each administrator is different. They have a different personality as to how they carry out their duties. By law, a county administrator is the superintendent of all your property, and they have the right to negotiate whatever they wish to negotiate with parties and to bring them before you for voting. Some administrators in the past have had me actually negotiate the terms after getting some general direction and write up all the language. But others have not used me to write up the language. Mr. Coffey would enter into, which it was perfectly legal. I want to make it abundantly clear that it is perfectly legal for a county administrator to sit down with another party and to engage in negotiations about issue X. And they can promulgate it in whatever form they wish, memorandum of agreement, a lease, or whatever. If it is something that goes to you as the board that you have to sign off on, the administrator must bring that finished product to me if the administrator handled the entirety of it. So that's what happens at the end with Mr. Coffey. He chose to negotiate his own agreements. And I would be presented those documents at the end of whatever that process was. My role at that point is only to look at whether all of the provisions, the wording, et cetera, is proper. So, for example, just so and I know you as a board would understand this, so let me try to bring a particular example to really shine the light on what I'm describing. If the lease agreement says the tenant is only going to pay $500, but I personally think, well, that's too low, it ought to be more. My opinion does not matter. It does not. It is the prerogative of the administrator. But let's say the document they give me doesn't have an insurance clause in it, or it doesn't have an indemnification protection for us, then that's what I do. Now, with respect to the lease for Bing's, I remember working on that document, and I will tell you what my contribution was specifically, which I've mentioned before. It's been overlooked. In the agreement that was presented in 2011 and again in 2018, in the first agreement it was Section 2. In the 2018 agreement it was Section 6. And if you'll bear with me, you'll know when I read it why I did it. A lease is presented to me on terms. I can't question the terms unless they're illegal. But I can do things that I believe are necessary to make the agreement legal. In Bing's, it is a very unique situation. So it required a unique protection clause. And these are the words I wrote. Lessee, meaning captains. Lessee acknowledges that Bing's Landing Park is a unique environmental, recreational, and historical park facility that, 1, is located on the A1A National Scenic Byway. 2, is part of the Flagler County Coastal Greenway. 3, is within the National Estuarine Research Reserve of the United States. 4, includes historical resources that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And 5, has received national and state awards for its historical, environmental, and scenic quality. Lessee, meaning captains, acknowledges that lessor has achieved these characteristics characteristics and attributes with substantial investments of its funds and staff, numerous grants from the state of Florida and the federal government, and broad-based volunteerism from its citizens and civic groups, lessee, again, captains, further acknowledges that it will operate its facilities and services to the public in recognition of and in respect for these attributes and the park's importance to the citizens of Flagler County and the state of Florida, and accordingly will not compromise or harm the quality or reputation of this unique park or its resources. That is an Al Hadid contribution to a lease. The terms, the various provisions, other than, like I say, insurance, indemnification, I remembered I added something about the certificate of occupancy. I look at it to make sure it's all in proper legal form. This clause that I read is an example of adding something to a lease that I think is an important provision. I think you can see it for itself. Approved as to legal form, that was the question. Approved as to legal form does not mean that I endorse the document. It does not mean I wrote it. What it means is that I've looked at it and I put everything in there that is legally required, and I've removed everything from it that I think is illegal or somehow not proper in some form. So it is not an indication that I drafted the document. If anybody ever wants to know, they can. Now, as to the references, as to what we do, what was stated on the record about the cost that we have and whatever. First off, that's not my salary, but I'll tell you what, if they want to pay me that, please do pay me. I would really appreciate it given the number of hours that I work. And all of you know what that is. You do not need to have me comment on that. But I would just remind, just to highlight a couple of things. We have saved and recovered millions of dollars for Flagler County. One of the immediate things that jump out in my recollection is the $22 million lawsuit that was filed against Flagler County, 2015, and we defeated it. Zero. The amount we paid was zero. I can remember earlier there was a horrific accident on one of our roads, and there was a trucking company that was involved in the wreck. We were also sued because it was our road, and it was a jury trial. A $6.5 or $5.5 million verdict was rendered against the trucking company. The verdict rendered against us, zero. Also, I want to very quickly remind the board that I have gotten the Ethics Commission to award almost $250,000 for the abuse of its process that we had to endure. Now, those are not judgments of Flagler County. Those are judgments by the state of Florida. And my understanding is they will, we're still, by the way, I don't know if you know this, I don't know the last time I updated you, but we still have some attorney fee proceedings. We just finished a hearing, an evidentiary hearing, where an additional fee is going to be levied against Mr. McDonald for his continued abuse of the process. So the amount of the money hasn't even stopped yet, plus it accumulates interest.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Deed. You have something, Mr. Mullins?
Yeah, I want to say this, and I'm going to speak for me. I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I'm going to say I with a lot of this. But when I came in, I was very adamant about going through and making sure that if anyone was doing anything other than what was for the people, that I would address it. And I have looked, I have watched it, and I have lived up to that 100%. I think it's a horrible lease. I wouldn't have done the lease. I wouldn't have done it on an owner part, and I wouldn't have done it on a tenant part. But that's why I asked it that day. I was very clear wanting to know who looked at it, who reviewed it, and where it went. But it's out there, and we've got to address it, and it's something that I think we've got to do and do it soon. I don't think it should be put off. But I've worked with Al, and I don't see any reason at this time of anything that he's done or not done other than defend this county. I reminded him, and I remind him often, that there are 5 commissioners and that these 2 guys work for us 5 commissioners. That the past one, there may have been some question if there was a 6th one or if somebody was working, but I can assure you that is not happening today. It is not going to. And if for Mr. Hadid to come in and start doing more of what he's required to, then I question, is he working as an attorney or is he working as a commissioner? And and I'm going to say I would not support that, because you guys voted for 5 people, and these 5 people need to make the decisions based on what the majority of this community wants and what's for the best interests. If someone's not doing something or doing something that will hurt that or hurt this community, then I'll be the first to stand up and fight for that. And I can promise you that. And I think the 4 others would as well. But again, I'm not going to speak for them. But I have really looked closely at this and will continue to do it for the next 3 years. It's not going to happen. This government belongs to Flagler County residents, and it's going to stay that way. But I appreciate everything they've done, and I've really respected the work that they've done. But I believe me when I say it, I watch it daily.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I believe this discussion begs for an explanation of the path forward, and I just want to assure the board that in every instance in this case with Bings, both the county attorney has been represented at meetings as well as myself. We have gone out of our way to make sure that equal time is given to all interest in this. If we have a meeting with the tenant, we have a meeting with the community group. Mr. Hadid is in almost daily contact with attorneys on both sides of this issue, and I will assure you that I will not be drawing the lease, that although I participate in the negotiations, I would not want to assume the personal liability of drawing that lease when Mr. Hadid gets paid to do that.
Just one other clarification here is the lease has a requirement that the lessee maintains $1 million general liability policy, I'm sure, and we monitor that. I'm sure they have to provide us with a certificate of insurance, and that's pretty standard on any commercial lease. So I think that's what that's about. And of course, the county has general liability insurance as well. So.
Mr. Chairman, I have not had the opportunity to familiarize myself totally with our tickler system for telling us when we need to check on these things, but I will look into that this week.
Okay. All right. Last set of comments from Ms. Cody regarding letter to the state regarding Roundabout. Maybe that's something, Mr. Cameron, you could verify for us. I don't remember the specific action on November the 5th. I know I was here, but that's something we can look at. I would also suggest maybe Ms. Cody could get with you on the other issues with respect to the signage and what's going on out there.
And the playground equipment, I have a note on that also.
Okay.
I do want to say something about the roundabout. We've got a meeting with DOT. I've got a town hall meeting with them coming up in June at Hall Creek. We haven't set the date because we had to move it because Ms. Cody couldn't be there. It was set on the 23rd of May. But we do have that meeting where they're going to come out and speak about that. That is a very serious concern on that intersection. But it is in the process of being addressed as quick as we can. At the last town hall meeting, I left that meeting and ended up in the middle of the intersection before I realized there was a stop sign. So it's scary. But we're going to look at all possibilities with DOT and have that town hall, and then I'll come back and update you guys from that. And it's a publicized meeting, so I'm sure if you guys want to attend it as well, you can.
Okay. All right. I think that does it for our comments and discussion of those. We'll move to the consent agenda. Any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Commissioner Erickson, we'll start with you.
I'll try 7J and also the add-on there, 8B.
Well, 8B is not consent.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
So 7J, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Last one on the page.
Okay. Yes, sir. Commissioner Erickson?
That's it, no.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hanson. That's what I meant to say.
None.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I'd just like a little more explanation on 7H and J, H and I. They seem to kind of connect to each other. And just a little bit of information on what we're doing there beyond what's on the agenda.
Commissioner Mullins?
I have none.
Okay. All right. So we have. Oh, and I apologize. I would like to pull item 7D just for a comment. So would entertain a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7D, 7H, 7I, and 7J.
We have a motion on that.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, going through these here, item 7D is a request the board consider the appointment of Dr. Ron Jimenez as the Life Sciences Representative to the Economic Opportunity Advisory Council for a 3-year term. I just wanted to mention that Life Sciences slot, if you will, on the Economic Opportunity Advisory Council is a new slot, and it represents part of our efforts to recruit those types of businesses and an emphasis to those types of businesses to our county and the economic development efforts that Helga and her team work on. And I would also say that this is a really good thing and just emphasize that because Dr. Jimenez is, as you know or don't know, is the CEO of Advent Palm Coast and represents one of the largest non-public employers in the county. And so it's significant that he would want to give of his time to serve and advise us as we move forward on these recruitment efforts in the life sciences area. So I just wanted to emphasize that and say thank you to Helga for working on that and leading us in that direction. So
I think, whoops, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the hospital has announced already that there's going to be major expansions down there to add on employees, responsibilities, and services. So Ron's the man.
yes, sir. Commissioner?
I just had a question on he's not a resident of the county. Is that a problem?
I don't think by the bylaws of the committee it is.
Okay, I'm just curious. I didn't.
Yeah. Okay. If not, I'll entertain any other questions. I'll entertain a motion on item 7D.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 7D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Open that up to any public discussion. Seeing none, I'll close public discussion. Call a question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Next item is 7H. I think 7H and I are tied together, so Commissioner Sullivan, please.
Yeah, this is. I'm just kind of interested in someone kind of coming forward and explaining the connection of the two. The fact that we're hiring another person as an employee, plus we're going to use a consultant in addition. Kind of explain how that's going on and how that's going to overall be significant. I think there is a little bit more money now to spend, so I think that's also part of it. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Ralston Ryudika, Ship Administrator. So to Commissioner Sullivan's question, so H and I are tied together. So this position, or this request is for additional staff for the SHIP Housing Services Division. And the need is because, Flagler County was awarded a $700,000 community development block grant for housing rehab. So we're using a portion of those funds. We're allowed up to 15% of the grant for administration. And so we've done an RFP for a consultant and then also use a portion of that 15% to pay for this new position. And so the new position would work more with the CDBG grant initially. But this is really a request to address affordable housing needs countywide and for future growth of our county and for the organization to be able to address those housing needs.
Okay, so we feel that the money will be spent properly to hire another person plus do the consultant fee. How much out of the 700,000 grant or whatever it is going to, will that be used directly for these positions, or will I would think the county position would come out of our normal funding. Is that right?
Correct, a portion of it.
Portion of it.
Yes, sir.
Portion of it.
So, I mean, it might be, we have our purchasing manager and also our financial services director here to answer more questions about the numbers. But in my opinion, I think it's a good investment for the county. I mean, we're putting in about $40,000 in general revenue, and we're getting a $700,000 grant in return that I foresee the county being very competitive for future cycles.
Okay,
Commissioner Sullivan.
Go ahead.
If I may, I questioned this item to the point that I had an additional meeting with Ralston and then had yet another meeting with Ralston and the finance director. This will allow us to properly administer a grant that is addressing one of our highest priorities, which is affordable workforce housing and homeless prevention efforts. And the amount that we would be spending out of general fund is a relatively small amount when compared to the importance of the agenda item.
My observation is that Ralston's the only employee in this particular area, and he's quite busy, and he needs that extra person as we grow. We've got to get out in front of this money and get these RFPs, et cetera, answered and stuff like that. And I think although Ralston's quite busy right now, he doesn't have the time to juggle all of that. So I would support this myself.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yeah, Ralston, I found it enlightening when I read the requirements of your office and what you're supposed to do, and I quite honestly don't know how you do it. There was a caveat in there: if you can't do it well, I guess you don't do it. But it was very interesting to read the requirements of your office, and thank you for putting that in the backup. I thought that was really, and I support this wholeheartedly. When I read that, I said, "Oh my gosh, he can't be doing all that." But
yes, he
is. You can use some help.
And that's really what I was trying to just bring forward, that, what this is and the fact that the two items are connected, and that it's good that we're getting some additional funding to do things. So with that, I'd like to, can I go ahead with a motion at this point?
I had one comment.
Okay, sure.
Sorry. Well, are you good, Commissioner Mullins?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good.
thank you. My comment is really more for human resources. You know, one of the requirements in the job description was to have a bachelor's degree. And I had recently read an article about, you know, some cities and municipalities that are now actually de-emphasizing that requirement in their job descriptions because we're in a very tight labor market, and sometimes there could be very experienced people that would be intimidated to apply for a position because they don't have a bachelor's degree. Maybe they have an associate's degree, or maybe they just have 25 years worth of experience and have come up the chain. And so I just would, you know, maybe suggest you think about that. I'm not making this a requirement of the motion or anything, but I think that's something we should look at for all our open positions because I just think it might identify some other candidates that would be intimidated about applying because they automatically say, well, I don't qualify, so I wouldn't even bother applying. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's interesting that you bring that up. I have ongoing discussions with the HR director. In fact, I think I provided her with a copy of the same article that you read, and we are going to discuss that. I do believe that there ought to be a methodology for all positions where life experience or other creditable qualifications would supplant the need for just having a piece of paper.
Good comment.
Okay.
You know, I think with, if you drive through town center, I think you'll start to see what's going to happen with affordable housing. They're stripping land over there as quick as they can do it, and they're going to start popping out of the ground, and that means the county's going to be right along with them, et cetera. I mean, they build over there, there's going to be people building over here, and I think Ralston just needs this backup help, and it's not only good for what is going to happen in the short term, but writing these documents for the long term and making sure we're on that list. You know, that the grants are not guaranteed year after year, and we've got to keep ourselves visible and upfront with the folks that are making decisions on those.
All right, Commissioner.
Right, I think we have to take these one at a time. So I'll make a motion that item 7H, request to add housing program coordinator position, be approved.
Second.
Second, I'll open it up to public comment. Seeing no one approach the podium, close public comment on this item and call the question. All those in favor of approval on item 7H, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Make a motion, same motion for item 7I. That's the award of a request for proposal to Guardian Community Resources Management for professional consultant for fiscal year 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll open it up to public comment. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close public comment. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. That leads us to item 7J, and I believe Commissioner Erickson, you pulled that one.
Does this location have any historic value to it, or was it just the first jail and sheriff's office that we put up? And when we tear it down, are we just going to strip the land and just leave the trees? I don't know. It's I guess that's another piece of property for the county to look at for possible growth nearby. That used to be the area also where the sheriff's office had his vehicles repaired till we took that in-house, et cetera.
Commissioner, that building is really not to the degree that, or have any significance that it should be a historical.
Oh, no, I wasn't. I was saying take the building down, but do we put a plaque up afterwards, or?
Well, we salvaged two of the cell doors.
Okay.
For a future museum or
Okay.
display, just to keep something from it. But the building, quite frankly, is a liability as it sits, and we have already begun the salvage process. We've identified things in there that could be sold at salvage at a public auction system. Quite frankly, we got more for some of those items than I would have guessed, but it is, as far as the historical significance, is we did salvage enough of it so that we can do something in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Entertain a motion on that item?
Recommend that we approve item 7J on the consent agenda.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Open up to public comment. Any comments on item 7J? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. Bring it back to the board. All those in favor of item 7J, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to general business. Item 8A was, as we announced at the beginning of the meeting, pulled from the agenda, and we added item 8B, which is, I'll read it. It's consideration for the purchase and installation of fencing at the Flagler County Library at a purchase price not to exceed $55,000 and waive the procurement process. So I believe we have.
While they're coming up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
This was a part of our fast tracking of getting the construction underway so that we could get the quickest relief for the sheriff that we can possibly get. There were a number of different ways to handle this, but procurement discovered that we could actually save about $10,000, as I remember it, by asking for a waiver of the procurement process. And sometimes our procurement process does not provide the greatest value for us, and we need to be able to identify those, let you know when that happens, and have an opportunity to save the taxpayers' dollars.
Ladies?
Good morning, Heidi Petito, General Services Director. This item is to provide security fencing for the library property. As you know, that has become a construction site. We currently have temporary fencing installed. That temporary fencing does meet with the city's requirements. However, you are able to still go out there and move it and gain access to the property. What we had done was reached out to a local vendor who had provided a price quote based on his response and the dollar amount it triggered moving forward with procurement in the form of either a sealed bid or bringing that item to you in the form of waiving that process. When we did get that original bid from a local vendor, we subsequently went out to a vendor that we have under contract that we could piggyback essentially that procurement process, piggybacking award that was through the city of Ormond Beach. When we compared those two price quotes, the local vendor's actually a little over $13,000 cheaper. So that's why we're bringing it forward today. This would be for the perimeter fencing, approximately 4,000 linear feet of the entire property. It is commercial grade, 6-foot vinyl coated chain link fencing. It will have 2 gates installed that will provide access throughout the construction process of that site. With this formal bid, if we were able to move forward with this, it would definitely expedite the process, save us about 6 weeks from not having to move forward with the formal bid. Not only would we minimize the loss of time, but it would also be the energy of management and staff having to go through that process. I believe it's section 4.3 of the county's purchasing policy pertains to the competitive sealed bid proposal. The board does have the right to waive the sealed bid requirements of procurement.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I think it's fine that we're going forward with this. I would like to have just seen just a quick schematic of where this fence is actually going to go on the 19 acres. And the other thing, I think the question's been answered. This is a permanent fence. This is not like a better temporary fence.
No, this would be a permanent perimeter fencing of the property. It's chain link. It's the area to the north that we had gone and underbrushed and removed. So it's along the north property boundaries of the residents, and it goes along the west boundary would be along the canal or the stormwater pond, and it would cut across the front and the eastern side. The front and the eastern side may get realigned, obviously, with the construction process of driveways and things of that nature, but this is a permanent fence.
Yeah. I'm always a little concerned, having been here for a number of years, both in office and out. And it seems like every once in a while we do something quick, and then later people complain that, well, you didn't give everybody a chance to bid on it and all that kind of thing. So that's why I'm being a little leery on this without having more information. But it sounds like it's worth saving the money. So, but I want to make that comment now, just in case later on we tear the whole thing down and have to do it over again.
Heidi, or Chairman, I want to just say I really commend you guys on the word local, really using someone local in the area and putting money back in our economy. I know the mayor of Palm Coast has been pushing their local program. We've been talking about it through the county, and to put that back in locally, I'm really, Mr. Cameron, really impressed with the staff focusing on that. That's what I call focusing on Flagler. Also, the need to move quick. I agree 100%. I've been up there in the evening observing, and I've had so much of the public sending me information about people jumping the fence and going back on the property. And just last night, I witnessed some people staying on there and still camping there. It's not going to be safe as construction starts. So I think that time is of the essence with that. But really impressed that you guys work to get that locally, and hope we see more of that. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, this will be provide security for the sheriff, correct? I mean, that's the eventual
That's the
outfall
intent.
of this
Yes,
thing.
sir.
It's a security fence. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, County Attorney has advised me to make sure that the record reflects that this is actually being done because it is the best price.
Okay. You had something, Commissioner?
I was happy to hear that the fence is going to be 6 foot high. I mean, the city of Palm Coast 2 or 3 years ago to cut down on crime, et cetera, around the school in Rimfire, et cetera, put up fencing that was 4 foot tall, and the kids just continued to run over it. They'd run down somebody's driveway, they'd run over the fence, et cetera. It provided no protection until they made it higher. So I'm pleased to see that 6 foot is the preferred product here.
And this, just to piggyback on Commissioner Hanson's comment, that this works for the sheriff's requirements. Sheriff? I don't mean to call you up, but you could nod if you want.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, Sheriff Rick Staley, yes, my understanding is that this will be the permanent fence that will dovetail into the construction and building perimeter. I would like to also just mention that our deputies are actively making arrests for trespassers on the construction site now. In fact, I was involved in one on Friday night. And so if anyone is on that property, Commissioner, if you see somebody in the future, need to call our non-emergency number and 313-4911 and call us, because we will put them in the Green Roof Inn. Okay.
I did hear that y'all responded very fast to that, and I want to thank you. This was public coming out and saying it, and they said y'all were quick to get back on it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Petito? No? Chris? No? All right, I'll open it up to public comment on this item. Item 8B. Anyone from the public wish to comment?
I'm just curious.
You have to identify yourself. Thank you.
Joan Avatato.
Thank you.
What's another 2 feet for somebody climbing over it? Or is it going to have barbed wire on top of it? Just curious.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I think.
Oh, yeah, one more.
Mr. Chairman, in answer to that question, if it's appropriate to answer it at this point.
Yes, sir, I'll allow it.
The fence is designed so that additional security could be added to it at the top, depending on what the sheriff is storing there. It's going to have a storage feature in the final construction, and it may require in the future some additional permitting from the city of Palm Coast and some additional security measures at the top of the fence. So it does have that capability.
Right, just to clarify, we don't get to do what we want. We have to stay in compliance with all city codes and regulations as well.
Yes, sir, and we're going out of our way with all of the municipalities to make sure that we're respecting their ordinances and their regulations.
Yes, sir. I apologize.
That was one of the reasons I mentioned the 6 foot, because that's what the city put in to keep the kids out. It wasn't the school that prompted putting the fence up, it was the city, because the neighbors around the area there, the kids were running right through their yards and into the school that way. So it was they who put up the 6 foot fence.
Yes, sir. Okay. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Catherine Moran.
Yes, ma'am.
And my thought is that we're putting this fence up simply to keep the homeless out. We have a very good sheriff's department that could monitor this. Could we not spend the money perhaps on a social worker that could go in and help these people? We're just wanting to put them in the Green Roof Hotel. Why can't we spend the money on a social worker? Why don't we give the money to the sheltering tree, this $55,000? instead of building a fence. Fence really necessary? It's a very public area. We see, people will call. I don't think $55,000 is necessary to be spent on a fence. A social worker maybe, but not a fence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Not, I'll close the public comment section and entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 8B, which waives the requirement to compete this.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Okay. Number 9 on our agenda is public hearings, and we have one quasi-judicial hearing here, and this is application number 3173. It's a request to amend and restate the development agreement for the Renaissance at Hammock Dunes PUD, parcel number 0411-312984-000E10180, which is plus or minus 7.77 acres. The owner is OR Associates, LLC, and represented by Robert E. Dickinson, Dickinson Consulting. And this is a quasi-judicial matter, so we need to see if we have any thing to disclose, Commissioners?
None.
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 And the chair has none. Okay, so I think, Adam, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, Adam Engel, Planning Director. Julie, if we can pull up that PowerPoint that I have. So this is the subject parcel, and this amendment, this project should not be new to you. This is right behind the sales center, previously designated as a commercial parcel within the Hammock Dunes DRI, the former Hammock Dunes DRI, designated as mixed-use, low-intensity, and it had the PUD designation on it as part of the original Hammock Dunes development. And so this time, this iteration is to amend and restate the development agreement, that once we got done doing what actions we had taken before to put some meat on the bones for the PUD, to add some development criteria, the contract settler at the time had come back and said, I don't have enough room to put swimming pools in. And we had talked about that as part of our review, and there was some discussion that, well, they just won't, or they'll have to make it smaller. And then in the end, the contract purchaser came back and said, this doesn't work. And so you'll see those changes there for pools, pool decks, screen enclosures. We also eliminate the 35% maximum lot coverage, and that still leaves intact the minimum 30% pervious. So then if you think about that, you'll have a maximum impervious of 70% that'll still be there as a restriction, along with the setbacks that apply. Changes are consistent with the preliminary plat approval. There's no change to preliminary plat that's needed because of this. Hammock Dunes HOA supports the changes, and then the planning board recommended approval. You had awaiting for you today draft minutes just for this item on your dais, and then at that last page in that packet was attachment A. That was the HOA letter from the Hammock Dunes HOA expressing their support of this request. And so I presented this in a clean ordinance format and a strike-through, and these next two slides will go through this in greater detail. So minimum front setback reduced down to 15 from 20, and then your rear setbacks increased for some, and those are the lots that join the project perimeter. So from 25 to 30 for those, mainly along the golf course, and to be able to give some extra buffering there. 20, those stay the same for some of those lots, 15 for others, and then all pools, pool decks, screen enclosures, language that was lacking before, now a 15-foot setback for those. Side setback stays the same at 5 feet. Side setback street side stays the same at 20 feet. Perimeter side yard, 15 feet is called out. And then you have let's see, and that's the perimeter lots. That's a special criteria. That's adjacent to, in particular, adjacent to our Greenway parcel is where you'll see that extra side yard required. Building height stays at 35, taking out the lot coverage. Pervious area stays at 30. Minimum living area staying at 1,700 square feet. And then you'll see in our comments, as part of our technical review committee review, the Development Engineering had called out no mechanical equipment allowed within a 5-foot side yard setback. We've had issues with that. with this, these developments of these smaller lots at 6,000 square foot, it's been a problem. And so the language then that was proposed by the developer is what you see here at 2, and I'll read it into the record because we've had some question about it when I was coming into this meeting. Side setback areas shall provide for proper access and property drainage as follows. A, no mechanical equipment shall be permitted within 10 feet of mechanical equipment on adjacent property. The survey submitted with the residential building permit shall include the location of adjacent residence and all mechanical equipment indicating the required separation. And Part B, each residence shall include roof gutters with downspouts connected to an underground drainage system, including PVC yard drains and low points on the property, leading to an outlet location as required by the community drainage design parameters. You'll see then the renumbering that's there, 3 lot coverage being eliminated. So the distinction there for us, lot coverage, areas under roof, impervious, pervious, being by default impervious, that which cannot then absorb stormwater, rainwater. With the 5-foot setbacks, the intent of these 2 criteria, and the problem we've had before is the setbacks are measured to foundation, to the building foundation, do not typically include eaves, but then we have easements that come into play. So side lot line easements, typically drainage and utility easements, we have historically not allowed any encroachments into easements. And then we had the proverbial person trying to put in 100 pounds on a 50-pound bag, the lot, come in and build their home and then say, I didn't leave any room for the air conditioning pad on my right side setback. And so the county caved and created an instrument at some iteration with county attorney support. And that was, I believe, not when Mr. Hadid was here, but created a hold harmless instrument that then could be recorded in a public record that acknowledged then that if you did one of these things that didn't conform to the side yard setback, that it could be some point in time you'd have to remove that. That if somebody then said, I've got a reason to get into that drainage or utility easement, then you're putting it on notice that, hey, I know I did something that's kind of an exception. Think about fences here for us. Fences are always on property lines. Those are things that are, yeah, they're structures, they require permits from us, but they are seemingly not permanent, or at least not as permanent as a home foundation. And so with this instance, you have the air conditioning pad. We've had different iterations here. We've had a 3-foot or a 4-foot allowed within a 5-foot side setback, and so you still have some clear area that's here. Clearly, if there is a ditch that's there, typically that's what we're talking about, a side lot swale, that's better than the situation where you have a drainage pipe. And so there are some iterations here that you look at on a case-by-case basis. So with this admittedly, a language provided by the developer, says that you can put these in a setback. From our standpoint, we don't want them in an easement. We would never want mechanical equipment in an easement, but this language at A says, yeah, we can put them in there, and we're going to make sure they're at least 10 feet apart so that you don't have a situation of air conditioning abutting air conditioning where you effectively have taken away whatever purpose that side lot drainage, potentially drainage easement would have. But still, again, thinking here in the terms of setback. And then B, the intent with that is to pull the roof drainage off. And so you're directing it then. And so the intent there is that we're in some way minimizing the flow that's coming into those typical side lot line drainage easements. We're directing it then appropriately. This is, again, the language proposed by the applicant in this situation. It's different than we've had before in any other development. I'll leave it for you to consider. If I can get this thing to move on. And so then we've given you the 4 options. These have been reviewed. This language had been reviewed previously by the planning board. They had no specific mention of anything that I've then added extra emphasis here today. They did recommend to you approval of the request as provided. Your options available on the table. Approve the request as provided. Approve the request with modifications. If you don't like that language that was put in there by the developer, if you don't like any of it, you can always just deny the request. Remember, the strike through and underline, that part that's struck through is the old language. And materially, the only effect that I would see that it would add back into 35% lot coverage. It would also then change the setbacks. It would then take away that specific lot pool screen enclosure setback. I think in the least, that was what they were trying to get out of this amendment. And so you can make those changes however you see fit. Number 3, deny the request. And number 4, table the request if you think there's something else that we've left out. With that, I'll conclude my comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your interest.
Thank you, Adam. Questions for Adam? Go ahead. Let's see.
Could we go back to the side yard issue? I thought when I was reading through that the issue was they didn't want any equipment in the side yard. That's what I read.
That was our comment, and then the response back from the applicant was, well, we'll kind of meet you a little bit close. We're going to say instead we want 10-foot separation between equipment piece to equipment piece. It's better than we've had before, but the comment from the development engineer was no equipment within the 5-foot side setback because the setback was so small.
Yeah, and that's the county's position, right?
That was, yes, sir, at TRC. And so that the language offered by the developer is what you see before you. And so it was intended to be compromise language to meet us in some position, acknowledging that we typically do not have equipment meet setbacks. We do, however, require equipment pads, including pool equipment pads, to be located outside of a drainage easement. Remember, setbacks are measuring to building foundation. Typically, equipment's not meeting that.
So if we hold to the position that we don't want any equipment on the side yards, what does that do to the developer or the builder? Then he has to put them in the backyard, right next to the swimming pool?
Several options: front, back, or on the rooftop mounted. And so, and there's various reasons I can give you for why all those or any of those are not preferred. Same argument, though, I think I could give you probably for putting it on the side, because you always think then ahead of the neighbor that has to have the bedroom that's with a 5-foot setback, so you're having 10-foot separation. Maybe at that point they're 7 feet off of the neighbor's air conditioning, and so they've got their bedroom window there listening to that off and on. But there's certainly a way. The other option, make sure I mention this, Mr. Chairman, you can have a cut-in. You can have an alcove that you create, and others have been able to have that through maybe an aggressive design to be able to have it where it lies within the building footprint itself.
Sure. So your recommendation then is that we approve this negotiated ability to put the equipment on the side yard? Is that what your recommendation is?
I've offered the language to you that the developers come up with, and I'll contend from my standpoint that both the prior PUD that didn't have any specificity here and this iteration both meet the LDC criteria for PUD. I'm going to be hesitant to recommend one or the other. I'll say that the development engineering comment was clearly keep it out of the 5-foot side setback. This does not do that, but it does keep a 10-foot separation. And admittedly, I'll tell you that part too. We have allowed the equipment to be within the setback, but not allowed it within the easement, but then through the instrument that we've had that has been this hold harmless agreement, have allowed them to encroach even into an easement, so long as everyone acknowledges that those things can be removed at some point at the owner's expense.
Commissioner, there is one component of this that we haven't really discussed, is we do set up a competition between property owners if one gets there first.
Yes.
And then the other one needs to put his there, and he contests the fact that this guy got to do it and I can't, and it sets up a potential dispute resolution issue for our enforcement staff.
You're speaking to the clause, the 10-foot clause, that if the first guy puts his in, the next guy has to be at least 10 feet away.
That is correct.
That's what we're saying. All right.
Commissioner Sullivan?
My comment, if we can go back to the original schematic, and it's probably my fault for not doing as much advanced checking on this as I can. One of the deals was that we wanted to make sure there was a second emergency access into this property going out to the road, the main road. Is that included now?
That's included to the, I think, still to the part that we had approved it before, and I can't remember where we had exactly left that. If it was going to be temporary for construction purposes, you can see it shown on this site plan, but there have been no changes to that emergency access.
So that's still hanging? That emergency access will be there when the project is completed?
I think that was, and I can't recall. I think it was for construction purposes, and then I can't recall where we left it on the emergency. I know that there was some discussion that was continuing after our meeting as far as negotiations and the routing of that. But
personally, I'd like to see that locked in because that was what we had discussed. And just one comment, then I'll let our other commissioner talk. One way to alleviate some of the problem on that side mechanical stuff, is to ensure up front that you alternate. In other words, you put the equipment on the same side of the house for each unit. That way, there's only one in each area. I don't know how you could make that a fact, but in other words, each house, the equipment's on the same side, which eliminates. You only have one on each side.
And Mr. Chairman,
But the access road to me is a big deal.
We do recognize the role of the HOA in much of this as well, that and have kind of historically depended upon the HOA to be doing those kind of calls, that so long as it meets a code requirement for us as far as construction code setbacks where they are applicable, then we've left that to the discretion, hopefully, of the HOA to be able to mediate those disputes. If I could add one more point, subpart F, and I'm reading the last sentence there, and this was unchanged, so that's why I didn't give a lot of consideration to it this time. Temporary construction and permanent secondary emergency access through the adjacent county-owned Greenway parcel is authorized pursuant to and subject to the limitations of an easement agreement to be recorded in the official records of Flagler County. Again, no modification of that language. So it's intended to be temporary construction, permanent secondary emergency access.
Well, okay, it was a significant item when we discussed this the last time.
Remains so and unchanged.
I'm sorry, let me break in here. I'm so sorry. That easement has been concluded and recorded. I'm sorry. I sort of raised my hand over here, but I'm sorry. I could have avoided about 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I don't know when to step in. I don't know when to step in. I raised my hand and try to be polite, but if I have to, then I'm going to break in, and you just have to forgive me.
You need a buzzer.
No, I don't want to.
I still think
I wouldn't hit the buzzer. Never.
I was so enthralled with the conversation, I didn't look over that direction.
All right, it's all right.
I still think it was a valid question I had, Al.
We do seriously need a recognition light system for the chair where various parties on staff and other commissioners can notify the chair that they have comment.
Or you could just zap me if you want. You just put something. I'm sorry. So go ahead, Mr. Adid.
Be careful what you suggest. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. No, that's it. It's the easement was completed and signed. I know, Mr. Hanson, you were the chair at the time. You remember signing it, right? I had my little approved as to form signature on there, right? Yes.
No, I agree with Commissioner Sullivan's comments, though. That was a very touchy issue, whether or not to have that as a permanent easement, and it appears to me that it is a permanent easement. So we've satisfied that requirement. But Mr. Sullivan is right on. That was a very touchy issue at the time.
That's correct.
Okay, good. So the answer, the question's been answered.
We may want to amend. I saw that language and I thought about the language that he read to you, that they're subject to an easement that will be done. What we may want to do is, with the board's consent, whatever your action is to just say an update with the recorded data, so that it's very clear and people reading it don't think, oh, it's still pending.
But it doesn't say anything in the literature about that, but if you look at the drawing, one of the drawings does say it's permanent.
You're absolutely correct.
Anything else, Mr. Mangle?
Yes, sir. One more point. Back to Commissioner Hanson's comment. I think that you are within your prerogative. If you choose not to accept, go back to this language, that you can track our language that was from the TRC. This is a PUD. And so if instead you wanted to stipulate that there will be no mechanical equipment within the 5-foot side setback, that is your prerogative.
Commissioner?
Well, I think Commissioner Sullivan's comment was brilliant. I think if you could say it, that there would only be one piece of equipment per separation between the two houses, that one house could have it on the port side, and the other guy has it on the port side, and the next guy has it on the port side. Pardon my Navy terms, and that would solve the problem. Which solves the problem. It just goes away.
Yeah, but that probably messes up your garage always being on the same sides too.
Well, is the applicant here? Anyone wish to present on behalf of the applicant.
I always look forward to this gentleman coming up because he normally corrects us.
Doesn't look like
And
Mr. Dickinson.
he tells us why we're wrong.
He's got the right name, too.
For the record, my name is Charlie Faulkner.
Yes, sir.
And I am, I guess, maybe representing the applicant. I'm representing the landowner. To everybody's surprise, a couple of weeks ago, this whole deal fell apart. And we think we will have it back up and running, maybe even this week. We've got a lot of people are interested in this. My feeling is that a lot of effort, a lot of work went into making this project buildable for the product that everybody envisions and would like to see at Hammock Dunes. And I will always yield to Adam on this one in particular because he's had a lot more hours involved in the discussions than I have. But I would request that you leave the language like it is. That was worked out with the Homeowners Association in conjunction with the home builder, and it was a pretty important item. Although I do agree with Mr. Sullivan's approach. If we could generally get that in there, it might make it easier for everybody.
Don't make it permanent.
But I would really hope that you could see your way and be able to approve this PUD modification today. This has been quite an onerous project for everybody involved. But with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you may have, but I'll probably more times than not yield to Adam.
Any questions, Commissioners?
Is this the project that they were presenting a few weeks ago?
No.
Okay. This is a different one.
That was
All right.
Beach Walk, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
No, my only comment was this is a good project. I mean, it's really a good project.
Thank
It
you.
really is.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
I would open it up to public comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Not, I'll bring it back to the board. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for any additional comments, questions, or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the quasi-judicial application 3173.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Well, then go ahead.
Okay. I still would like to just solidify the point that Mr. Hadid made, that the secondary emergency access is permanent. Somehow include that in the motion, or however it should be done correctly. Since Adam did not have it in what was presented.
But we've already signed the easement. I mean, we've made it permanent.
But the language doesn't indicate that.
I think what Mr. Sullivan is suggesting, maybe I didn't say it well, is to put in the citation to the public record of where the easement has been recorded.
I will amend my motion to include that that the permanent easement be cited in this agreement. Thank you.
Okay, will the motion's been amended, will the seconder agree
Still,
with that?
yes, sir.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Okay. We are on to item 10, which is additional reports and comments, and we'll start with you, Mr. County Administrator, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item that I'd like to address is the sheriff's rental situation up at Marketplace, and that is, the sheriff was notified late last week that because that is a month-to-month rental, that they have increased his rental rate to $10,000 a month, and that would give $120,000 a year, which over the 2 years of construction would give us about $250,000 spent in rental for the sheriff's facilities at that shopping center. And we estimate that the amount, and Heidi, I don't think she's still here, but she had given me an estimated amount of about $40,000 to modify the Sears building so that it could accommodate the sheriff's needs. And that would be a considerable savings if we were to go ahead and do that. And along with that, put the bank building on the market. And when the Sears building was no longer needed for the sheriff's operations, that we would put it on the market. It should represent, by doing that, an approximately $200,000 plus savings for the taxpayer, and the market value of the Sears building is only going to go up in the next couple of years.
What's the current rent on that space?
It's $77,000 a year now, which is considerably higher than it was before the lease ran out, but it has just been raised again to $120,000.
What's market, roughly?
Market would probably be in the neighborhood of $50,000, if I'm not mistaken. 60, yeah.
And have we tried to negotiate or talk to the owner, because that's disgraceful.
I have not done that.
Let that be known.
I have not done that because we felt the $77,000 was still going to give us considerable savings if we utilized the Sears building for the interim.
Okay, go ahead.
I hate to bring this up, but it's a little of I told you so here. Before we have gotten to this position, a year and a half or so ago, I'd have to go back and look at the record, we bought the bank building for a place for the Palm Coast Precinct office. That's the way that was presented, with some minor modifications, and we were supposed to be able to get into that bank building for the Palm Coast Precinct. At first, it was going to be January of this year. And we knew at that time that the owner of City Walk was going to continue to, the sheriff even told it, that it was going to continually raise that rent. So I just wanted to make that point, that was, we had a plan. We're not idiots. We had a plan to alleviate what was going to be a City Walk situation. We then got into a situation where modifying the bank building was taking more time due to a number of reasons, availability of our internal work crew and associates, putting a new roof on the bank building, things like that. It's a little of the, the horse is already out of the barn is where we are now. But just so, for public record, your Board of County Commissioners thought we had made a correct decision based on a recommendation from the sheriff and our former county administrator to alleviate the situation earlier this year to get out of the City Walk deal. So now we're faced with this. I just want to make that for the record.
You have something, Commissioner? No? Okay. All right. Sorry, Mr. Cameron. Go ahead.
My recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners would be to consider giving us instructions to move forward as rapidly as possible to make the Sears building suitable for the sheriff's occupation. In addition to relieving the situation at City Walk, it would also help to solve the interim problem of the sheriff's situation at the clerk's office. Doesn't totally satisfy that need, and that's going to come up in discussion next, but it would go some ways toward relieving the situation at the courthouse, in addition to saving the $200,000+.
I'm assuming you're on the same page with this, Sheriff?
Chairman, Commissioner, Sheriff Rick Staley. Short answer, yes, Mr. Chairman. But let me just also add a little history to this. I am in this facility at City Walk based on a contract signed by my predecessor. We did think that we had a solution, and ironically, I asked the former county administrator to build a new district office on the library property, and he denied that, and that's when he brought to you the bank building for purchase in lieu of that. So it's kind of come full circle, quite frankly. The building was purchased, I believe, summer or late summer of last year, knowing that the lease expired in December 31st, 2018, and we, in fact, gave notice to the landlord that we would not be renewing the lease. We all know the history that's occurred since then, and we have tried to negotiate with the landlord, Chief Strobridge has, but he is within his legal rights to do what he's doing, although none of us like it. So I think that the interim, you have two buildings that you really don't need anymore. One we could move into, and I'm contracted with the city of Palm Coast that I am required to have a district office in the city. That is the quickest fix and the quickest move, and the least expensive. It also would allow me to fix my purchasing that's currently partially in the abandoned building and partially at jail administration. That area would get relocated there. We could also get the records out of and from finance and HR that's still in the abandoned building, so the employees don't have to go back in there. It does not do much for the situation that we're currently under for the 2 years of the construction, but it will help improve the things that I just mentioned, and I think it's the best way to go. Not ideal. It's not the ideal building for a district office, but I also know we have a light at the end of the tunnel, and my team is willing to work with the county because we know that there's a permanent solution coming.
Commissioners? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Cameron, how far along were we with the bank building, converting it to the sheriff's use? At what point did we stop work on that, and how far along was it?
The roof has been fixed, is my understanding. The overhang for the drive-in has been addressed. The window where the drive-in used to be needs to be completed, and the interior modifications remain to be done, is my understanding.
So you're looking for consensus from the board?
Just a consensus. I think I have the authority to move forward, but it is a county property. I just would like to have the blessing of the commission in doing that.
I have no objection to this.
I do not either.
I'm okay.
I'm reluctantly okay. I'm fine.
Okay.
Moving on to the next, I had direction at the time that we approved building a new Palm Coast district office at the library site to work out an interim solution to the sheriff's dysfunctionality at the courthouse. And we have moved a good ways toward doing that. What you just put a piece of the puzzle into place. In addition, the sheriff has worked very hard to figure out how to take whatever small space is going to be freed up at the courthouse and utilize it. I have had discussions with the clerk, and the clerk has taken the position that he is unwilling to make further accommodations. This leaves me with the task of figuring out what to do with the detective section of the sheriff's department. which is obviously a critical operation that needs to remain with the patrol and command structure of the Sheriff's Department, because they interact with each other all the time. Right now, we're at a bit of an impasse, and I'm not sure what I would need to do to preserve the integrity of operations and at the same time come up with the space. So I'm just going to have to tell you that I have not been successful.
Well, they're currently all located in the courthouse, correct?
Yes, Rick Staley, Sheriff again. So here is the situation. We moved roughly 70 people out of 901 East Moody Boulevard. About 60 of those went into the courthouse. The others went into jail administration. The problem is I went from 35,000 square feet to roughly 6,000 square feet. They are packed like sardines. It has now come to the point where it is drastically hurting the operation and the work environment for those employees. We have things planned like a real-time crime center. I can't even implement it because I have no space. So now we're starting to see the impact besides just the operational hassles that we have. Now we're seeing real impact into the sheriff's operations. And so my staff has tried to work with the clerk also, and we have had no success. The same thing with your county administrator. And it's unfortunate because the best solution is the interim solution in the courthouse at the least cost to the taxpayers. But now it's either time to bring it to a head, or we need to lease the sheriff additional space. We can't continue to operate, especially for 2 more years, in the working conditions that the employees are under. And I would encourage you to come through and walk through and see the conditions that they're operating under. Some of you I know already have, and then also see the availability of space. Thank you.
Mr. Cameron, have we looked at the Butelek building on 1 as a possible building to rent?
Yes, sir. We have a proposal. You're talking about the one at the intersection of Hunterstone?
The one that we kind of ballyhooed, and he went out on a limb and built that building, and he's been unsuccessful in getting a client in there.
We do have a proposal for that. The upside of it is that it would certainly generate enough interim space and could be fairly quickly built out. Not as quickly as some other things, but the downside is that if you make that investment to build it out, the landlord is going to certainly want more than a 2-year agreement for that. That's a brand new building, and you're going to set the tone for its usage. So, I mean, we can pursue that if we're unsuccessful in coming up with some other solution. I had really hoped that because we had a definitive timeline that we would be able to get some additional space in the courthouse, but failing that, it is going to end up costing some money.
Commissioner.
I hate to go this route, but it is true that the courthouse is our building. The Board of County Commissioners, we own that building. It would seem to me if push comes to shove, at some point, we just direct the clerk that we need additional space in the building, and we just we make it and accept whatever bad side of that will be as far as the clerk looks at the situation.
You know, that's certainly an option that the board has. I would hope that we could get this done without having to use those measures, but I am running out of options.
I'm just pointing out that ultimately that is a possible way we could go.
I will continue to work on it, but as the sheriff says, I mean, I've visited his detective area up there. Detectives have to have some degree of privacy when they're talking with suspects and witnesses and so forth. And that looks more like a mail order phone bank than a detective division.
Anything else on your report, Mr. Cameron?
Yes, sir. One last thing, and I'm going to preface this by answering a question that was brought up about putting up a fence to keep the homeless out of the library area. That is absolutely not correct. It is a fence to keep any unauthorized person out of a dangerous construction zone. We will be doing timbering almost immediately. We will be moving logging trucks in. We will be moving in heavy construction equipment. Trucks will be backing up. You just can't have unauthorized people running around in a construction zone. And this is in a fairly highly populated area. And we do not want to run the risk of harming someone in that zone, and since it's got to have a permanent fence for security reasons for the sheriff's department, this makes a whole lot of sense. Secondly, I would like to really take my hat off to Heidi Petito and Janet Nichols. They did a magnificent job of getting that site ready for construction, working with the homeless folks to make sure that they had better alternatives than staying there if they chose to avail themselves to them. And they worked weekends. They took all kinds of measures, and as a result, we were able to clear that area out, find accommodations, with no conflict, and the site was cleaned. We've had a trespasser to come back since then, but the sheriff's department has addressed that. But those ladies had a tremendous task in front of them, and they just performed that in an exemplary manner, and I can't say enough about how proud I am of what they did there. It's a real credit to the kind of people we have working for us.
I want to say something too, and I want to back you up on that. They did a phenomenal job. When I walked through those woods, this wasn't an easy task. And we as a community cannot leave people in those kind of environments. And it already started back. When I went by there this morning, I noticed the trash and stuff started back. And this was only a matter of a few weeks. I do want to let the public know and the other commissioners know that we on the Public Safety Council have been working very hard with the Homeless Task Force. We are working on getting this is typical stuff that happens when there's not a policy in place of how to address homelessness, and it's overlooked. It's been overlooked for a long time, and we're addressing it. It's something that we're going to get a grip on, and we're going to get a policy. We need legislation. We need a place where we can do a strong assessment. That's where we're talking about the social workers. There are social workers here. There are people all through the community that can sit down with them and work with them, churches and different organizations. And then we need a place to have them put, not leave them out, simply out there. There's good and bad mixed in there together. I have had a lot of pictures sent to me of stuff that's just unacceptable in this community that I'm going to be sending around that the homeless are doing. laying on top of each other on street corners. Just stuff is just unacceptable in an area. That is not someone asking for help. That is someone that is just trying to sit out and drink beer and sit on a corner. And those have to be addressed. And that's where that legislation is going to come in play. I am going to make sure from the Public Safety Council that we have something to recommend in the next 30 days with legislation and with the whole process of how to address it. I know the cities have been very, and we'll recommend it to the commission, but I know the cities have been very understanding and have been at the table with us, working with us. Mr. Cameron, you have been. Many people from the community have been. So it is getting addressed, and my goal from that council is to have something to present by the middle of June that we can put in place how to address this issue. It's not over. Just removing the site has not ended it. They're moving to other locations. It's creating problems with homeowners. It's creating problems with the environment. It's creating problems for them. And as a community, we're going to help the people that want to be helped, and the people that don't, well, we've got to address that situation. I will say this, and you were a little nicer in saying it than I am. There are a few individuals that are running around doing their own thing and not being proactive to a solution. This is something that we as a community need to work together. And if those individuals continue to do it and it throws against the procedure, we're going to have to address that because it is causing problems and putting life at risk. It's putting this environment at risk. I mean, when I say environment, that kind of trash is not good at being out there. But we're going to have to address that because for whatever reason, they're not working with the system. And this is something that I encourage and plea to everyone in the community. Work together on the solution. Don't work independently. We will solve this together. This is not a problem that other counties and other cities haven't addressed and haven't got a good program. It's time for us to do it now. Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Staley, your guys and the staff has been phenomenal. Y'all have been very humane with people. Your response times are incredible. I will say that. They've been really good. But y'all have been very good in dealing with it in a humane way, but also in a way where we need to stand our ground and just not allow stuff to be done anywhere, because this is not the community. There are kids in this community that have parents have reached out and witnessed stuff that they just shouldn't have. But I appreciate your staff has been phenomenal in handling it in a neutral and in a very strong way. They've been fair on all parties without the policies that we need in place. But it's something that needs to happen immediately. But I think the work to this time we have done, you guys got to think, we just, when Chairman O'Brien went in there, it was what, January, February? A lot has occurred since then. We have addressed something in a phenomenal way that a lot of counties would have taken years to address. A lot of stuff has happened in the last 3 months since you've been here, Mr. Cameron, and I appreciate your help. It's like God sent you here, and I've really appreciated what you've done and been able to do. And that's me speaking, but we are addressing this issue. It is going to be a procedure here presented soon. And I will be sending out an email that it will be public as well of a lot of stuff that people have sent me of why it needs to be addressed soon, of stuff going on street corners, underneath bridges. It's dangerous. It's dangerous, and it needs to be handled soon. But I want to commend the staff to this point.
Well, I do want to, I'm glad you brought up certain things. Number one is the clearance of the situation at the library was not intended to address homelessness. It was intended to clear a construction site out there, and we had to do a lot of things to help folks. And as I said previously, Janet Nichols did a tremendous job, and she has been publicly criticized in this chamber, and unjustly so. She was sending me written reports naming the individuals and what she had done for them on that given day, and those have come in daily. And she has done some Herculean work They like everything else out there. We could use more staff, but with what resources she has available, she's done a fantastic job, and I'm happy to go on record as saying that she is one of the best case managers that I've worked with. She really cares about people. She maintains good connections and resources, and she works. But there's only so much that one person can do, and she's doing a great job for you.
Okay. So we need to move to Mr. Hadid's report, correct? Sorry, Mr. Hadid. And just before we do that, Commissioners, just kind of give you a heads up where we are time-wise. You know, if we want to get to a lunch break here before we have our budget workshop, we're getting on the clock here. So, so let's, brevity would be great if we could. But go ahead, Mr. Hadid.
Yes, I'll jump right to 10B, which is the item that I put before you, and I kind of have to run through it. It's something for the record. I'll be as brief as I can. This is a procedural issue that was left over from the November 2018 lease for Captain's, whereby Captain's was authorized to construct a replacement restaurant next to the pavilion and interpretive center of the Malacompa plantation, General Hernandez's plantation. It was an appeal filed by the Hemet Community Association. It was filed in mid-December, actually right before mid-December, and they attempted to challenge in the administrative appeal the site plan decision made by the Planning and Development Review Board. You have since rejected that site. That was option 3, as you may recall. So the administrative appeal challenged option 3 that was in the lease. So you've done that. You've turned it down. We never presented the administrative appeal to you for any action because the planning director determined by written opinion, which is part of your backup, that there was no appeal from the planning board's decision to the Board of County Commissioners. If they wanted to take a remedy at that point, because of the way our land development code was written, they had to file an action in court, not pursue it with you. Now, that was a procedural question, all right? Now, as to the issues they raised, that the Captain's expansion violated the environmentally sensitive lands program, that it violated the comprehensive plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those arguments were not affected. It was just the procedural issue where our land development code does not provide an avenue and appeal to you for this particular kind of site plan under our land development code. Now, I talked with Dennis Bear Friday. Dennis Bear is one of the attorneys. He co-signed it. That is the administrative appeal. I talked to him this morning before 9 o'clock just to confirm he doesn't have any objection to our closing the appeal. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're closing it. You're not having to vote on it. It's a decision that we've done by your folks. And by the way, Mr. Cameron concurs in this outcome. I've looked at Mr. Mengel's analysis. I see no question or saw no question of it. I believe it is valid. So having said that, they've not suffered, the Hemet Community Association or its members have not suffered any prejudice by this because they've been able to make all of those arguments that it violates the ESL, that it violates the comp plan. You're still hearing from that, so no avenue for them to have input into the decision has been cut off. But we do not want, as a matter of policy, to grant an appeal in our codes where none is provided for. So this is simply following our code and not opening it up. And again, this is this action is not prejudicial to the Hemet Community Association. This doesn't stop them from making these arguments. Our closing of the appeal is not a finding that the ESL was violated or not violated. It's not a finding on any of the facts because the appeal is not being considered because it is not valid. So there is no action you have to take. I'm certainly prepared to answer any questions. You must, by the way, because of the change a couple of years ago in the public meetings law, you should solicit public comment even though the board is taking no action. I did provide in the backup to this agenda item, it's a lot of pages, the entire record, all the emails going back, the arguments and so on. In addition to Mr. Mengel's formal opinion, I did that for the purpose of transparency. So if anybody wanted to delve in and see what was presented, how it was argued, how it was rebutted, how it was supplemented, they'd be able to see that. So unless the board has any questions, my report on that item is concluded.
Thank you, Mr. Hadid. Okay, so item 10C is commission action. Any?
Well, there is no commission action. You're just getting a report. You have no, we're not going to do creep.
I was already moving past to item 10C.
Well, I believe that you should ask for public comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Because I didn't hear that.
I understand. Now I get it. Okay. I was thinking we were going to incorporate that into the community outreach portion, but I understand we need to solicit separate public comment regarding your report that you just made. Item
Thank you, sir.
10B. Okay. I would open it up to any public comment on the itemized the county attorney's report. Item 10B. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Move on to item 10C, which is items for commission action. Commissioner Erickson?
I have nothing.
Mr. Hanson?
One item, we have sort of left Bunnell hanging on future building of a sheriff's office in Bunnell and hanging on the library. And I think it's incumbent upon us to alleviate the concerns that the Bunnell City Commission has by at least coming out and saying, we're going to build a library. And it may not be for 3 years or 5 years. We are going to build a library, and we are going to build a sheriff's substation in Bunnell. So I think we need to alleviate their fear that we've cast them aside and just go on record and say, we are going to build these things, and we're probably going to build it in the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully in the next 3 years. I just think we should go on record and say that so they don't continually say we've hung them out to dry, you know.
Commissioner, I'm happy to tell you that that's part of my plan. I'm looking at the financial picture. We need to get a lot of these uncertainties this year behind us. I'm asking staff to be very judicious in their budget request. I've asked the sheriff to be judicious in his budget request. But our financial picture moving forward is really pretty good. We're getting good valuation growth. We're getting good construction growth. And unless something unforeseeable happens, we've got one of the best economies, I think, I heard this morning, since 1969. And there's no foreseeable future of that dramatically turning down. We are going to have a pretty good couple of years. And I understand the community's, the commitment to the community on the library, that we had bought the land and we actually had a grant and turned it in because of our present financial uncertainties with what our obligations were going to be. And the sheriff's going to need a district operations center in Bunnell. There's no question about that. So we can save a lot of money and mobilization and other things by doing the library and the district office simultaneously. And I don't think that as early as 3 years is an unreasonable projection.
Thank you. I think that's all they need to hear. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Commissioner Hansen's points. I do still take homage against what the Bunnell City Council did, come forward condemning our actions. I'd like to see them rescind that particular item, given what what Commissioner Hansen has said.
Action items, Commissioner Mullins?
No action.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I let something slip here. I was reading in one of the local newspapers here that Brevard County has now improved their traffic plans, that they're going to build some overpasses, et cetera, on the road, and I've quickly thought about our overpass on the way to Flagler Beach, what we're calling a bike trail, but they're now considering allowing golf carts. First of all, I'm a little concerned about that bike path, that we've got 180-degree turns once a bike is coming down and having to make a 180-degree turn, et cetera. But we've got to make sure that we speak well, that there are no golf carts allowed on that particular item.
Okay. There's no other commission action items. I'll open it up for community outreach. And again, this is a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment for items not on the agenda, and each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes. Please identify yourself.
Good morning again, George Mayo. Concerning Bing's Landing and Captain's Barbecue, I've been to many meetings here, heard the compassionate and speeches, et cetera, and many of the Hammock Dune residents referred to it as our park. It's my park. It's our place. As if, since I live in the southern part of the county, as if they have more propriety as to what goes on there. And it gets a little disconcerting. And I'm sure you will all do the right thing. I'm sure if anybody in the Hammock owned a building where a certified contractor said, you need a new roof, you need new walls, you need a new floor, your floor joists are rotting, you need new electricity, you need new plumbing, and we're not sure you have any concrete slab underneath you. I sincerely doubt that anybody would say, okay, go ahead and fix it, and not just knock it down and build themselves a new house. So I'm just putting in my portion. I know my wife and I enjoy that place. Many of our friends enjoy Captain's Barbecue. And to say we should just leave it alone and maybe fix it or not do anything is irrelevant. And like I say, it's just disconcerting to hear over and over. It's our place and it's my place and it's my park and it's this and that. And many other people, and citizens of Flagler County, enjoy that place just as much as anybody else. Thank you very much.
And I would agree that it's a majority of folks who make that comment.
Okay. Any other speakers? Start the timer. Sorry, sir. I appreciate you having a sense of humor with me, sir. Thank you.
This will be a short one. Sheriff Rick Staley. And I just want to say that I appreciate everything that you're doing to try to solve the problems with our building that we all inherited. Okay. But I would implore you to give some direction to your county administrator on how to solve the interim problem sooner than later. It is now an untenable, and I would call it a crisis situation. And I've thrown up my hands. I know Chief Strobridge has. So please give direction to your county administrator. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on. Last item is commission reports and comments. So, Commissioner Erickson?
I have nothing.
I just want to add my support for the Songwriters Festival this last week. It was a fantastic event, and it will be coming back next year also. It's a wonderful event.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Two quick comments. The first is, I don't want a discussion on this, but we've given direction now for over a year to get the financial software in place including, and I know that has to be coordinated again with the clerk, because they'll all be using this new system. We're spending money, and I hear rumors that it's been delayed again, and it's not going forward. And therefore, I would just like to say that we need an update on that at some point, either with a workshop or at our next commission meeting. That's my first comment. My second comment is, I personally would like to delay the start of the budget meeting by half an hour to 1:30 to give everybody a chance to eat and get their act together.
Commissioner Mullins.
Spoken well.
I just want to update on a few things. Had a we've had a town hall last week at Hidden Trails. Very positive response out there. A lot of excitement about seeing things moving in the county finally. Mr. Cameron attended with me. We got a chance to talk to public and address needs, and then actually hear about some good comments about things getting done throughout the community, and not just there, but all over the county. There is some accountability that a lot of people would like to see, and I think that's something that as it progresses out, we'll see the need to do it. If there were any backdoor deals, they need to be addressed. The waste removal, I have not been getting as many emails as slowed down, and I know the city has said it's kind of improved a little bit. Waste Pro, we'll see what happens. It's a long road ahead, and it shouldn't be hard to improve with as many comments as we had. City and county, the cities in the county, even despite what happened with the Sheriff's Operations Center, the Palm Coast District Office, it is a great environment that we're seeing, and I think the county manager has been doing an excellent job working with the city managers and the mayors and working together from what I've seen in the meetings I've been in. Plantation Bay Utility, we didn't just identify a problem, we're going to be coming soon with a solution. I've been following this very closely with it being in my district. And I think we're going to see it probably at the next meeting. If all goes right, we're going to look and seeing solution on the whole project out there, not just pieces of it. There is a town hall tomorrow night at 6 o'clock in Espanola. Espanola has had a tremendous amount of work done out there, from lighting to trees being cleared to signage. They are starting to feel and see that they are a part of the community, which they always have been, but really making the effort to show them how valuable that history and that part of the county is. It will be at 6 o'clock at the Espanola Community Center. And then also there is a business town hall on the 21st with the mayor of Bunnell that I'm doing it's at 5:30 at the Chicken Pantry. And the mayor, we have been in dialogue. I know the media had portrayed that we were going at it. She's passionate about her community, and I respect that, and I think we all do. But the relationship is fine there. Everything is going well. I'm excited to work with her and bring economic development is what we're working on right now. One of the big things, and there's some really good projects that are alluring here on the birch of the county and the city right now. I think we're going to see some big stuff pop up here real soon. But sheriff operations, I'm glad we've got an office for y'all. Y'all are doing a great job, and sheriff, you're doing a phenomenal job. From when I moved here in 2007 and when I started being here a little longer, law enforcement is very serious here. I think it's important that we have consistency in it. I think that the public realizes that, and I hope you plan to stay around a long time, because you're doing a great job, and we need that here. Public safety has been always the top issue. And, although I hate us having one shooting, I told the public it does feel odd. And it's great that it feels odd to have a shooting like that here, a murder like that here, because if we were in Chicago, it would just be another day. But you've done a good job at making us a very secure community, all aspects of it, and appreciate that. And I do think it's time to get that settled over there. I think it's just got to be a cooperation of of the clerk and you, and he's just going to have to understand we're all in a little growing pattern, and he needs to work with us, and I hope that he does. But overall, this county, the perception at the town halls is we're moving. We're a county of action and moving forward, and it's a lot of excitement to hear what's to come. And I just want to thank everyone for attending, and please come to them, because that's where your voice is heard, at our town halls. Please come to them and attend. And Mr. Cameron, Mr. Hadid, thank y'all for y'all's work as well, and I appreciate y'all being so responsive and reactive in the staff. I saw something at an event we were at that really made me proud to be a part of Flagler, and that was where an employee had his daughter with him, and they were doing some work together at one of the after events. To see her in his arms filming, and just it shows that we're a community of a county of family. And that atmosphere, I've heard from continual employees how much better the atmosphere here is in the county since you've come. So appreciate that, and just know that that is such a great accomplishment when your employees have smiles like that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I've just thought of something. Over the past few months, we've talked with Bunnell. We were part of a big get-together with the city of Palm Coast, and we were talking about fiber optics, and et cetera. And I think we as a county have to start talking about that ourselves. I've had people come up to me and they say, well, when are you going to install this? When are you going to do this? When are you going to? And then an equal number of people that say, like the one over at Bunnell, a couple people just said, yeah, but don't charge me more for it, et cetera, in his taxes. So I just think that's a particular subject that we need to talk about going forward here.
Okay, for my report, or comments, I wanted to just to thank our legislators. I think we had a pretty good legislative season up in Tallahassee with the session just ended, and wanted to emphasize a couple things. This year we were able to again skirt any new legislation encroaching on our home rule and our vacation rental ordinance, so that's good news. We had an additional county judge position funded, and it looks like it was in the language to be funded permanently or approved permanently. So that's also a good thing and a win for us. And it's my understanding that they did fund the library construction bucket to the tune of over $500,000. I don't know what the total was, but we were first on the list. So if we want to avail ourselves of that $500,000 grant, we can do that if we haven't already. I'm not sure where we are status-wise with paperwork, but those are three things that were right on our list of legislative priorities. So we had some wins there, and I think, directly responsible, obviously, for that is our legislators working on our behalf. So I wanted to thank them personally for doing that. The only other thing I wanted to, and I also wanted to commend our lobbyist, Lester Aberger. He stayed in constant contact with us, and I know he did with me throughout the session as to where things stood. And, I was one of the ones that said we should look to maybe shop his services in the past, but I have to say this past session I was really pleased with his communication, his outreach, and his efforts on our behalf. So just wanted to say that. And then the last thing is I am going to have a one-on-one meeting with the clerk this week. That was something that I had scheduled. I've taken all these comments, to heart, and yours, Commissioner Sullivan. So I'm going to relay those to him in our conversations, and maybe we can move the needle. I'm not promising anything, but I will tell you that I will deliver the message very loud and clear, and maybe that helps. We'll see. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is it time start?
Okay. Can we legally do that? Move a noticed meeting?
Technically, I don't think so. You could
be late.
You could have someone to open the meeting and put it into recess, I think would be close to a good way to do it.
I think it, yeah.
Boy, we
Okay.
make the paper.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I move we
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
So moved.
Second, we're adjourned. Thank you.